Hi, my name is Leslie Thomas, and I am the founder of Artworks Projects and the co-founder of Mira Studios. And I am a filmmaker and curator and human rights um, policy advocate, or human rights advocate who works mostly in the policy space. My goal is to try to move the needle and address grave human rights abuses. And the methodology that I use involves collaborating with many, many incredible documentarians in still photography and videography. And that is something that I think can be done really, really well. I use what I call a reverse engineer process. It's very simple. Anybody can do this. In my case, it also involves a lot of coffee and maybe not so much sleep, but that's another story. Um, what we do, and I say we because this is a very collaborative process, is we figure out what we're trying to address. In the history of my work, this tends to involve ethnic cleansing, genocide, conflict-related sexual violence, siege, starvation, tyranny, child labor, forced labor, um, crimes against humanity, war crimes, crimes of aggression, and other things of that matter. So the issue is, what is the issue is what is the issue? That's step one, being very clear about that. And sometimes it's not the whole issue, sometimes it's a piece of it. Siege and starvation is happening, but the issue right now that we're focused on is how to get food into an area that desperately needs it. It's important not to get tangled up in your ask. This will make more sense later, but just to be very clear about that. The second step is, what is the institution or the body of people or the set of laws? What is the thing or being that has the lever of power to allow the goal to be met? Again, you want to be very clear on this. Is it that a new law has to be written, or is it that a law that's existing has to be reinforced? Is it that the law exists, there's will to reinforce it, but there's no budget for it? Is it that it needs to be solved in the Security Council or at the ICC, International Criminal Court, or the ICJ, the International Court of Justice? Or is this a court of public opinion situation where local laws at a very granular level have to be implemented or changed? There are all kinds of different ways that institutions or groups of people come together to either open the gates or close the gates about an issue you might want to change. And then the third thing is, how do you partner with others, with civil society, with other advocates, with lawmakers to get that policy changed and or implemented? So the way we go about the second step, which is the body, is by learning a lot from the partnership. When we start a project, we go all the way back in reverse engineering and say, now we know what we want to change. We have a sense of what is the body that can change it. Now we need to get to step one, which is, who are our partners? Is this a function where there are multiple elected officials who would like to make this happen? So what we need to do is address their staff members, connect with them, and understand how they feel that this law or this budget can get passed. And in that connection, for example, with elected officials, understand that they respond and are responsible to voters. So what are the other partnerships? What are the voter groups that are involved with the issue that you are trying to make change on? Is it other human rights advocates? Is it, and this is typically where we start all of our conversations, is there a group of human beings that have a lived experience, or other sentient beings, if we are working on animal advocacy that are not Homo sapiens? Are there people with a lived experience who can inform us as to the best strategy if we are not in that group ourselves? So how do we form a coalition of folks who have a shared goal? I would say this, we form coalitions, we are part of coalitions. We don't give up editorial control. The projects that we do are led by our ethics and by the collaborative team of that exhibition or that film. And then we use that film in partnership with other groups to work with institutions to provide platforms for gathering, for publicity, for media coverage, to get people on record and to convince policymakers to make change. Pretty much that simple. It's just that sometimes you have to do it over and over and over and over again. Sometimes it could take 10, 20, 30 years to see a change that you want, even more. Could take centuries. Sometimes it's faster. We always feel that it's worth it. I'm going to give you a couple of examples by just sharing my screen here, which is, I think, an easy way to do this. I'm going to go to my desktop. And this is a project called Darfur, Darfur. This project came about because I wanted to do something to address the genocide that was happening in Darfur. Tragically, now there is violence, terrible violence again in the same situation. I reached out to people like Ron Haviv and others, Lindsay Addario, James Knockway, Marcus Bleasdale, many, many others. And we assembled a series of projections that we began to take around the world. And we timed those projections with events that were happening from a policy perspective around divestment, around pushing Sudan to change, around armaments decisions. These projections, this is in Boston, this is in France, this is in Slovenia, and in Lisbon. The timing of none of these was accidental. This was when there was a gathering of the European Union in Lisbon to discuss the issue with the African Union. The same thing was happening here in Paris. Boston, this was a very major push to try to get states to begin to divest in the United States of Sudanese oil and trade, and so on and so forth. This project ended up being part of an enormous coalition all over the world where we gathered with lawmakers to find the different ways that they could educate voters, educate themselves, and themselves bring coalitions together to make change. We've used that methodology many, many times. This is a range of projects that we have done about disappearance in Mexico, about the process after Syria. Bloodstones, Burmese Rubies is about, this is a little bit slow loading, is about economic challenges in Myanmar. In Syria, we have done an enormous amount of work. Congo Women is a project in which we looked endlessly at the role of conflict minerals and sexual violence in Congo, again with Ron Haviv, Marcus Bleasdale, Lindsay Addario, and James Knockway. The exhibition was shown all over policy capitals, and I'm going to share here now some examples of this work. In the Senate Russell Rotunda, when we were working with Senator John McCain and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and others here, excuse me, actually, Russ Feingold, images from that. This same exhibition here in the Houses of Parliament in London, and here at the London School of Economics, and at the United Nations when they were rolling out a new program around addressing conflict-related sexual violence. Each and every one of these exhibitions had a very specific goal as to what they were trying to get done and when they were trying to get done. Another way we've gone about this is with film. Right now, in collaboration with Roya Sadat and Roya Film House, we created The Sharp Edge of Peace. And when that film launched, the goal was not to be in a bunch of film festivals, though that was very nice. The goal was to get the global community at the EU during the UN General Assembly to address it. In this case, we created a very short version of the film, and Meryl Streep opened the film. The UN Secretary General, because she was there, decided to join. He would say otherwise, but I think that's probably why. And we had an enormous amount of press that came out afterwards. This was to try to create a reset in a world that had forgotten that the Taliban has erased almost all rights for women in Afghanistan. It then got picked up by Christiane Amanpour and had a huge press release around the rest of the country, the world, excuse me. The same thing would be about the prosecutors. This is a film that we created with documentation of prosecution that was already happening of conflict-related sexual violence in Bosnia, Congo, and Colombia. The challenge there is that the laws exist all over the world, but they're often not enforced. So our strategy there, after talking to lots and lots of organizations, was to say, okay, what if we show that this work is happening? What if we illustrate the fact that prosecutors are doing this, and what they need is a whole lot of support. So here, this very long and not graphically exciting list actually shows you some of the places that we have screened the film. And what's exciting about it is if you look closely, you will realize that these are all places of power. So we have the Office of the Prosecutor within the International Criminal Court having private screenings of this. We have in Kosovo, supported by UN Women, we have the Kosovar prosecutors learning from the Bosnian prosecutors how to do this work. We have in South Korea, where there has been endless need to address what happened to women in World War II, prosecutors and judicial officials looking at how can we still bring justice to women who are very, very old and deserve this before they die, those who are left. The list goes on, but each one of these screenings was really designed to make sure that survivors, their advocates and experts, their community, and the judicial community could come together and push for policy change to implement these laws. These are just a few projects in which we've done this kind of work. But I want to emphasize that it is very, very simple. There are really just three steps. What is the issue you want to change? What are the levers of power that can change it? And who are the partners that you can together assemble a coalition to use your documentary work as a platform? I'm happy to talk to you about it more, and I love connecting with people who are working on these kinds of projects. Thank you very much.